You just said you haven't been sick in a long time, that your car has never broken down, that everything's fine at home, or that the new job is going great. Then you suddenly stopped talking, found the nearest wooden surface, and knocked on it 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. It's a small gesture that takes just a few seconds. Most people do it almost automatically. Even those who don't believe in superstitions or curses will sometimes still reach for a table, a door, or a wooden armrest, as if just saying the words out loud could invite bad luck. But why does wood specifically have to protect us? Why isn't touching a wall, glass, or metal enough? And why do you have to knock on it? Most importantly, who's supposed to hear that knock? The most popular version of the story says that people used to reach out to spirits living inside trees, but historical evidence points to a completely different origin for this ritual. These days, we usually knock on wood after saying something good. I've never been in an accident. My kids almost never get sick. Things are going too well. At that moment, a person feels like they've said a little more than they should have, as if they've drawn fate's attention to their own good fortune. And fate, according to old beliefs, doesn't like overconfident people. So they touch or knock on wood, trying to hold on to the good thing they just mentioned. This ritual isn't really about attracting new luck, it's about protecting the luck you already have. In the United States, people usually say, knock on wood. In the UK, they're more likely to say, touch wood. Sometimes someone will actually find a wooden object. Sometimes they just say the words. And if there's no wood nearby, they might jokingly knock on their own head. In some families, 1 touch is enough. In others, they insist on knocking 2 or 3 times. Some people think any wooden object will do. Others believe the wood has to be natural and unpainted. There's no universal rule, but the fear behind the action is almost the same everywhere. If you talk too confidently about something good, it might disappear. To understand why wood specifically became a shield against bad luck, you have to go back to a time when trees weren't just plants. To ancient people, a tree connected several worlds. Its roots plunged deep underground to where, according to belief, the dead and hidden forces resided. The trunk belonged to the human world, and the branches reached up into the sky, closer to the gods. A tree was born, grew, shed its leaves, and came back to life in spring. It could outlive many human generations. So people saw it as more than just a source of timber, fruit, and shade. They saw it as a living being with its own power. Many cultures had sacred trees and groves. People held gatherings under them, made offerings, swore oaths, and called upon higher powers. Some trees were linked to specific deities. Others were seen as places where the human world touched the spirit world. Oak, ash, and hazel were especially significant. But which tree mattered depended on the people, the region, and the religious tradition. It was believed that a spirit could live inside a tree. It could help a person, protect them, or punish them for disrespect. And it's from these beliefs that the most beautiful version of the story behind that familiar knock was born. According to this, a person would touch the trunk to call upon the spirit living inside. It was like knocking on a closed door. First, you had to wake the spirit. Then, ask for its protection. Maybe the second knock was the request itself, and the third was thanks for the help. Another version says that people weren't asking for luck, but thanking the tree for good fortune already received. The touch showed they remembered the forces they owed their success to. There was also a darker explanation. People might have believed that invisible beings were always nearby, able to hear human conversations. They listened especially closely to boasting. If someone bragged too loudly about their wealth, health, or happy family, jealous spirits might take notice. They would take away what they were proud of, or send a trial to punish them for overconfidence. Knocking on wood was meant to drown out the words just spoken. The noise kept the spirits from hearing the boasting. And if they had already heard, the sharp sound could scare them away before they could do any harm. So an ordinary tree became a shelter, a door, and a weapon against the invisible world all at once. This version explains almost every detail of the modern ritual. We say something good. We're afraid fate heard us. We find some wood. We knock to ask for protection or to drive away whatever might be drawing near. The story seems so logical that it's often presented as the proven origin of the superstition. But here's a serious problem. We do know that ancient peoples revered trees. The existence of sacred groves, cults, and beliefs in tree spirits is supported by historical sources. However, there's almost no direct evidence that ancient Celts or Germanic tribes knocked on wood specifically after a lucky statement. We don't have a reliable account of someone bragging about their health, knocking on an oak, and explaining that's how they ward off misfortune. What's more, there's a huge gap in time between ancient tree worship and the first known written mentions of a similar custom. If the ritual had existed for thousands of years, why is there almost nothing written about it? Why doesn't it show up in medieval bans, church teachings, or early collections of folk customs? Maybe the ancient version came much later. People were already knocking on wood, but had forgotten why. So a nice explanation was invented for the familiar gesture, linking it to druids, pagan gods, and forest spirits. But wood was important not only to pagans. With the spread of Christianity, another sacred wooden symbol appeared, and that's where the second version of the superstition's origin comes from. According to the Christian version, touching wood was an appeal to the cross on which Jesus Christ was crucified. The wood of the cross was seen as a symbol of salvation and protection. So by touching a wooden object, a person was supposedly asking God to keep them from harm. Over time, the actual cross could be replaced by any wooden surface. A table, door, or wall became a symbolic reminder of that sacred wood. This version sounds convincing, but it runs into the same problem as the tree spirit story. In medieval Christian sources, there's no solid evidence that people knocked on ordinary wood after saying something good. If the ritual had anything to do with the cross, preachers, theologians, or church instruction writers would have mentioned it, but they almost never did. The first known references to touching wood for protection show up much later, only in the early 19th century, and they don't lead to a church or a sacred grove. They lead to a children's game. In Britain, there was a game called Tiggy Touchwood and other similar names. One kid was it and had to chase the others. You could escape by touching something wooden, a tree, a door, a fence, or a post. As long as your hand was on the wood, you were safe from being tagged. The wood literally became a safe zone. For a few seconds, it made you untouchable. But the moment you let go and ran off, the danger came back. British folklorist Steve Roud believed this very game could be the source of the modern phrase, touch wood. The logic was simple. First, touching wood protected a child from the chaser. Then it became a symbol of safety. Over time, that childhood rule spread beyond the game and turned into an adult habit. The real chaser disappeared. In its place came bad luck, illness, and fate. People weren't running from another player anymore. Now they were trying to escape the consequences of their own words. So maybe when we touch a wooden table after saying, "That's never happened to me," we aren't calling on an ancient spirit. We're repeating the gesture of a kid who just made it to a safe spot. This version fits the historical evidence better. The first written mentions of touching wood for protection appear around the same time these games were common among children. Of course, we can't completely rule out older beliefs. People really did see trees as sacred long before the 19th century. Maybe that's why wood became such a fitting symbol of protection. But there's no way to prove a direct, unbroken link between ancient cults and the modern superstition. There's also another question. In the British tradition, you usually touch wood. So why in the American version do you knock on it? Probably over time, the simple gesture became more noticeable and expressive. A light touch is easy to miss, but a knock creates a sound that confirms the protective act is done. It's like putting a period at the end of a risky statement, and there's no set number of knocks. Some people knock once, some twice, and some 3 times. 3 knocks are often seen as a magical or complete number, but there's no historical proof that ancient people did it that way. Rules change from country to country. Sometimes you have to find unpainted wood. Sometimes you knock under the table. And in some places, wood is replaced with iron, stone, or another material. And that shows the ritual isn't about the power of a specific object. What matters more is the feeling that after saying those words, you've done something to protect yourself. This protective gesture looks different in different countries. In the UK, people often simply touch wood. In the United States, they knock on it. In Poland, some believe only unpainted wood works. In Turkey, the knock might be accompanied by touching the ear. In other cultures, people use iron, stone, or even their own teeth instead of wood. Sometimes people knock on their own head if there is no wood around. It looks like a joke, but even a playful performance of the ritual helps to feel that the necessary action has been taken. The materials, number of knocks, and accompanying words vary, but the meaning stays the same. A person fears that happiness spoken out loud might be noticed and taken away. When we say we haven't been sick in a long time, have never been in an accident, or that our loved ones are safe, a sense of anxiety arises inside. We understand that we cannot fully control the future. Health can deteriorate, a car can break down, a peaceful life can change in a single day. Knocking on wood lets us feel, if only for a few seconds, that we have done something to ward off trouble. The gesture itself does not affect future events, but it does affect our emotional state. If a person knocks on wood and nothing bad happens, it is seen as confirmation of the ritual's power. If they did not knock and soon something bad happened, that coincidence is especially well remembered. All the other times when someone did nothing and still remained safe go almost unnoticed. So the superstition gets a new piece of evidence every time, even if there is no link between the knock and what follows. Such rituals are especially persistent because they demand almost nothing from us. Finding a wooden table and knocking on it is much easier than enduring anxiety and waiting to see if something bad happens. A person loses nothing, but gains a small sense of control. That is why the superstition persists, even among those who consider themselves completely non-superstitious. So where did it come from? The tree spirit theory is the oldest and most mysterious. It is based on real beliefs of peoples who considered trees sacred and saw them as homes for supernatural beings. But there is no direct evidence that these people knocked on wood after making a fortunate statement. The cross theory fits well with Christian symbolism. However, it also appears too late and is barely supported by early religious sources. The most convincing remains the children's game theory. In that theory, wood actually served a protective function. A player who touched it became safe from the pursuer. This custom existed exactly during the period when the phrase "touch wood" began appearing in written sources. Perhaps ancient ideas about sacred trees helped the habit stick. But the superstition we know most likely grew not from a secret druidic ritual, but from a simple rule of a children's game. Picture a child running from a pursuer. The distance between them is shrinking fast. Ahead, there is a wooden post. The child reaches out, touches it at the last moment, and becomes untouchable. They made it. Now imagine an adult who just said, "That's never happened to me." They pause for a moment, find a wooden surface, and knock 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Maybe they are not waking a spirit or asking a forgotten deity for protection. Maybe for a few seconds, he's that kid again, the one who touched the tree just before danger caught up with him. A tree can't protect us from illness, an accident, or a sudden twist of fate. But it gives you the feeling that you've found a safe place. And as long as your hand is on it, it feels like misfortune hasn't quite reached you yet. So do you ever knock on wood after saying something good? How many times, and does it have to be the real thing?